Hey, so now that we've done demand, we're going to switch over and do supply. And what you have to understand is that supply has a lot of things that are the same as demand as far as the graphing goes, but the perspective is totally different. So in demand, I start with that because we all have the same shared experience of being consumers who demand something. In this case, you need to turn it around and think of yourself as a producer, someone who makes goods and supplies their quantity. So in this case, to make it simple, we're going to think about ourselves as farmers, and we're going to be farming corn. Now, the law of supply starts to take hold here, and we're going to see how that works. So imagine that you are a corn farmer, and your goal is to always try and get the most money for everything that you do. So as a corn farmer, your goal is to make money. In fact, that's the goal of every business out there. You need to understand it is always to make money. That is why people go into business. And a farmer is no different. So here we go. You've got your corn over here with these prices. Some are very high, others are very low, and then you've got varying amounts of corn that you could produce. You are not the only producer, but there's many producers of corn out there, and so you have to think to yourself, what will farmers do if the price is really low? And a lot of people think, oh, well, we'll make tons of corn if the price is low, because we got to make up for the low price. No, sorry, that's not how it works. If the price is low, then very few people are going to actually want to produce that corn, and so you're going to have a very low production level. And we're going to put it at this point right down here. Okay? If the price was to rise, though, some of those farmers who might have been growing onions or wheat or something like that would now say, you know, the price has come up. I'm going to plant corn, because the marginal benefit to them is to plant corn. So here they go. Now we've got more corn being planted. And as that price rises, each time we're going to see them plant more and more corn, because what they want is they want to make a profit. So what we can see here is that we have a relationship, and this mathematical relationship is a positive relationship. What that means is that as one variable goes up, the other variable goes up with it. So they go up together, they go down together, they move together. This is a positive relationship. For your notes, the law of supply states that as prices rise, producers produce more. Okay? As prices rise, producers produce more. As prices fall, producers produce less. That's the law of supply. And this has no exceptions. It always holds true. So if you were to say businessmen just want money, you're absolutely right. That's why they go into business, because they want money. So if there's money to be had when the price rises, they will produce more so that they can get that money. Now you have to understand that it's going to go in that positive relationship up and down like this. And just like with demand, that's movement along the line. So we got to remember, movement along the line is movement based on price. The price changes and the quantity changes with it. And as the price changes down, the quantity goes down, and it moves together, and that's movement along the line. Now you have to understand, the increase is in the quantity supplied, not an increase in supply itself. Okay? We're just making more stuff at this set of prices. We're just making more at that set of prices, and so they move together on that supply line. All right? Now, just like demand, what happens if there's another variable that affects things besides price? The way we represent that is we represent it with a shift in supply. So if there's another variable besides price, that's going to move the whole line. In this case, This is supply going up. Now, a lot of you will look at that and you'll say, hey, this line's lower than the other one, or at least appears to be, and so you'll think it's supply going down. No, the quantity, we're on this axis and it's going this way, that is supply going up. So anything moving this way is supply going up, which means this is supply going down. So keep that in mind. We're talking about this quantity axis over here, not the price axis. It's not up and down directionally. It's up and down according to this axis right here. So anything going that way is up, and anything going this way is down. This is supply up. This is supply down. All right? So what are the variables that affect supply besides price? And it turns out in all the studies that economists have done, there are only 5. Just like demand, there are 5 things that are determinants of supply. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look over here at change in cost of inputs. What are the inputs to corn? Got to have land, got to have seed, need water, maybe the pump to pump the water out, so maybe fuel for the pump. You might probably need a tractor or some kind of mechanized way of harvesting it. So you got 5 inputs for growing corn. If there is a change in the cost of those inputs, it will change how much corn we supply. So think it through. If the price of water goes up, I will grow less corn. The supply will shift that way. Okay, we'll be on this curve right here. If the cost of water goes up, I'm going to supply less. If the cost of water goes down, I'm going to supply more. That's how this works. So the number one thing that affects supply is going to be a change in the cost of inputs. If you change the cost of inputs, that price will change, and you're going to get a whole new line to deal with. All right? Because now if the cost of water is higher, it doesn't really matter what the price is. At each and every price, they're going to produce less. So think about one of the major inputs that every business needs. You're probably thinking oil, and that would be the second most important one. You're right. If the price of oil goes up, everything goes up. The price of oil goes down, everything goes down. But there's one thing that's even more important than oil. Labor. The price of labor is in everything, because remember, it's one of the main factors to production. Labor is the thing that matters the most. So what happens when people raise the minimum wage? What happens to supply? Well, let's see. The cost of the input of labor goes up, which means we're going to produce less. Okay? So every time we raise minimum wage, the supply curve shifts over this way. And you'll notice what happens there, that when the supply curve shifts this way, we have less of something. That's true. We also have a higher set of prices that we have to deal with. So that's the problem. Every time you do something to increase the cost of whatever is being produced, you get less of it, and it costs more. Seems sort of simple and, common sense, but there's a lot of laws out there that are designed with the idea that somehow we'll change things in the cost of inputs and nothing else will happen in the real world. Okay, going back to that philosophy stuff at the beginning with chapter 1, people don't want to see reality. They just want to say, let's just get more of something. Well, you will. People will have a higher minimum wage, and all their goods and services will be produced less at a higher cost for everyone. Okay? So that's the real cost of raising the minimum wage. Now, if we, come up with other, we're going to see this in just a second. So understand that. I've talked at length about that one because that's the most important one. Number 2, fairly simple. If you have more producers, they produce more. Right. So one farmer in your market is going to produce only so much. But if you have 10 or 100 or 10,000 or 10 million farmers, then the supply curve is just going to shift way, way out. And you'll notice when the supply curve shifts out, Not only do you get more of something, you also get it at a cheaper set of prices. You notice this is going this way as it shifts out. So what you're getting is more stuff at a cheaper price. So it's good to have a large number of producers. And in fact, there are millions upon millions of farmers that produce corn. And corn is pretty cheap. Okay? Number 3, changes in technology. It turns out that if you improve your technology, the supply curve will shift outward. You will get more and it will be cheaper. It only makes sense. That's why you come up with new inventions in the first place. So whenever we talk about changes in technology, we really just mean it getting better and driving the supply curve further out. Now, it could be that the technology would be lost somehow, but you have to have like massive cataclysms, like the destruction of the Roman Empire, and they actually forgot certain technologies until the Renaissance happened, and then that's what the Renaissance meant, is that they were rebirthing or rediscovering all these ancient Greek texts and Roman ideals of all the inventions and the ability to do things with engineering that the Romans had, that the Middle Ages really didn't have up until that point. And so they had to rediscover it. But for the most part, all changes in technology just increase the supply curve and make it go out. So that's what we're talking about. Number 4, government policy effects. We're going to do our whole nother episode just on those things because they have a lot of effects and they can be kind of complicated, and a lot of people don't like to hear what those effects are. So we're going to focus on those in a whole nother segment, just like we did with demand. All right. So as we skip over those, we go to producer expectations. What does the future hold? Just like with consumer expectations would be in the short run, consumer tastes and preferences. In the long run, what's the situation going to be like? Are you expecting long term that America is going to be growing and there'll be a safe and prosperous time? Then you're going to expand your business. You're going to buy more land. You're going to produce more corn. You're going to take out a big loan for a big tractor or a combine. You might hire more workers. You're going to take on more risk if you think things are good. If you think things are bad, then you're not going to hire people. You're not going to get that loan. You're going to put your tractor back together with duct tape and baling twine and keep it going for another year. Those are the kind of things that producers do when they're afraid of the future. So what is the climate going forward? That's going to tell you something. And they'll even have studies about this called consumer sentiment, producer sentiment. Like, what's the feeling that you as business people have going forward? So they actually measure those things and survey those things because it's very important if you're trying to figure out where the economy is headed in the future. All right? So producer expectations. It's said in the business field that the one thing that producers hate more than anything else is uncertainty. They would rather have bad laws than uncertain laws because there's no way to plan, there's no way to understand what's going on if you don't know what's going to happen. And so every election year, everyone just sort of pulls back and hunkers down because I don't know, which way is it going to go? Trump, Biden? This could be very different administrations. So a lot of businesses are just going to sit and wait. They're just going to stand on the sidelines. They're not going to do anything until they see which way things go, and then they're going to start. So usually once you have a new president, almost always business kicks up again. Because everyone's been sitting on the sidelines, and now they're like, okay, now I see which way the wind's blowing. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to start, doing what I need to do. A lot, a little, but they're going to do something, as opposed to doing nothing, just waiting. So one of the worst things you can have for a country is uncertainty. Because producers don't know what to do, and so they just freeze up. They won't do anything. All right? So hopefully this gives you a little better understanding of what's going through the minds of producers and how you understand some of the things with supply. We're going to be using these two concepts, supply and demand, for the next several chapters. And we're going to build on these blocks. So you really want to understand how this works. If you do not understand how this works right now, you need to ask questions in class, because if you don't understand this part, you're really not going to understand Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. Okay? So hope to see you in class.